Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Fluently Forward. Today, we are going to be both the floozies and the forward thinkers for this episode because we are going to be talking all about the lore, the history, the myths, the scary speculation and kind of superstitions involving certain numbers. And we are going to take it number by number based off of what celebrity has lucky numbers. So today we are going to be talking about Taylor Swift and the number 13 and all of the superstitions, the history around it. This is going to be fun, facts to pop out at a dinner party. Do you know why 13 is unlucky? I'm going to tell you. We're going to talk about Michael Jordan, the number 23, and many other celebrities who now have the number 23 as their lucky number and some creepy conspiracy theories around it. Beyonce, her lucky number is 4 and the power of the magical number of 4. Michael Jackson, his lucky number was 7. 7 is a very powerful number. I sound like a nut job, but I didn't even know about it until I started looking into it. And now I'm obsessed with the number 7 because it's also everyone's most picked number. So if you're playing a game with friends and you have to pick a number 1 through 10, odds are most people end up picking 7. And we're going to get into the reasons why for that. Kylie Jenner and the number 222 and weird coincidences that she has with that number. Ellen DeGeneres, her favorite lucky number is 11. And then we have other kind of conspiracy theories on numbers, ways that numbers are used in pop culture. Basically, it's just going to be fun. And I'm not a numbers girl, okay? I don't know much about Fibonacci, even though my great-grandfather was a mathematician. But this episode's just going to be a little bit of fun. So kick back and relax as we get into everything to do with numbers. All right, so the first number that we are going to be looking at is obviously the number 13. 13 is co-opted like a negative connotation. Basically, when you think of 13, you used to think of myths and elevators that just go from 12 to 14. And now and I know a lot of other people too, think of Taylor Swift. 13 is her number in such a deep way. For anyone who was like an old Taylor Swift fan, she used to perform, God, I know it was at the Speak Now tour, maybe others, with the number 13 on her hand. And she has all of these different references to it. So when she recently won at the Grammys, no comment about how she was at the Grammys. She said, quote, "This is my 13th Grammy, which is my lucky number. I don't know if I've ever told you that. I was born on the 13th. I turned 13 on Friday the 13th. My first album went gold in 13 weeks. My first number 1 song had a 13-second intro." So these are all different things that she's noticed throughout her life that is associated with 13. Now, she even goes as far to say, "Every time that I've won an award, I've been seated in either the 13th seat, the 13th row, the 13th section, or row M, which is the 13th letter." Really taking it there, which by the way is very big in numerology. And when we talk more in this episode about, people thinking that numbers are powerful and how they can be related to codes, it does rely a lot on the alphabet, right? A being 1, B being 2, N being 13, etc. And I will say, when I was doing the research for this episode, listening to all of her quotes about how 13 is so important to her and she can kind of tie the numbers together, and then when you add it, it's 13, but then when you blah, 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 it's this. And Taylor Swift is interesting because I think there's so much stuff about her out there. She's been around and observed, and her music is so kind of like a diary entry. You can put whatever you want on Taylor Swift. That's why we've done a lot of Gaylor Taylor Swift episodes, if you want to check any of those out, because I think a lot of queer people listen to her songs and they're like, I see you. Like that idea of a forbidden love that society can't know about because otherwise it would be dead, and I feel guilty and sinful with this love. I mean, come on. But a lot of people also say that Taylor Swift is neurodivergent, or they could see her being autistic. And I mean this not derogatory, right? Like pattern recognition is a thing that I definitely do way too much. And I see a lot of it in her quotes about 13 and M and the Easter eggs and how it all ties together, which is just kind of interesting. Now, it goes on even more with 13. There's a lot of crazy, is it coincidence or is it meant to be? This year's Super Bowl in Las Vegas that she went to, and Travis Kelce won with the Chiefs, was the 58th in history. 5 plus 8 equals 13. The date of the Super Bowl was February 11th, 2 plus 11 equals 13, okay? They were playing against the 49ers. 4 plus 9 equals 13. They also finished as the number 1 seed in the NFC, and then the Chiefs were the number 3 seed, 1, 3, 13. Her attendance at the Super Bowl was her 13th game watching Travis Kelce play. And I just find that interesting too. Like, at what point does she kind of have to work backwards to keep up with the 13 reputation? Or is it just happening because the stars, all 13 of them, are aligned? Now, her lucky number being 13 is especially interesting because 13 is usually regarded as a very, very unlucky number. I mean, I knew this like ever since I was a kid, and there's so many elevators, right? They don't have a 13th floor, but they really do. They just call it the 14th, but it's not the, anyway, whatever. I have lived on 13th floors before, and nothing bad ever happened. But let's get into some of the history and the lore around this. Like, why was 13 always considered such an unlucky number? So a lot of mathematicians and scientists, they kind of point to the number 12 and how it's like a perfect number, right? I mean, we have 12 months in the year. There's a lot of things related to 12 that we're going to be getting into. The ancient Sumerians, which, by the way, if you want to know anything more about them, check out our Patreon. We've done a lot of episodes related to that. But they had this numeral system that they created, and it was based on the use of 12. And that's obviously what we still use today. Most calendars have 12 months. A single day is comprised of two 12-hour half days. Put it together, you get 24 hours in a day. So some people just kind of initially thought, well, if 12 is such a perfect number, you add 1, you get 13. It's just lacking. It's unusual. It's not as perfect of a number as 12. So this was kind of like a little bit of the fear of the unknown. It's one away from the perfect number, so we don't like it. However, there's other different historical moments that have happened that have kind of made people go, there's something weird about the number 13. So obviously, in the Bible, Judas shows up, the 13th apostle, to arrive at the Last Supper, and he is the person who betrays Jesus. Additionally, they say that that Last Supper was on the 13th day of that month. So this is where we kind of start to see in Christianity 13 having an unlucky number, all because of Judas being the 13th person to arrive at the Last Supper. And now I'm thinking back to previous parties that I've thrown, and I'm like, the 13th person to walk in through the door, were they the one that got blackout and ruined the party? No, it was me. And I hosted it. Anyway, there's also different lore throughout the ages. So in Norse mythology and lore, there was kind of like this story that evil and turmoil first came into the world because there was like this party being thrown at Valhalla, right? Isn't that where all the Norse gods go? And Loki, who is the mischievous god, oh my God, played by Tom Hiddleston, who Taylor Swift dated, it's all connected. Anyway, he was the 13th guest at this dinner party, and he upset the balance of the 12 gods already in attendance. So now we have a second example of 13 being like some sort of bad number. But it's interesting because, sure, 13 is unlucky, but 12 is really in our lives in more of a way than I would have ever thought. I didn't think 12 was so important, but it's important for the calendar. It's important for the time, right? Like even a clock is broken down into 60-minute hour breaks, and each minute is 60 seconds because the base is 12. 12 times 5 equals 60. And you also go back to ancient cultures, there was some mythology because a year has 12 true full moons, and sometimes they'll have an extra moon, and people could either deem that back in the day of these ancient cultures as being unlucky to have an extra moon, the 13th moon. You also see this in other kind of the areas, right? So like the Apollo 13 mission failed. 13 was obviously a number that people associate with that. In tarot cards, when you look at the deck, the 13th card is death. Although, I'm only 101 in tarot, basically. Death actually isn't like a bad card. Like most people, if you don't know anything and you pull the death card, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I personally think the Tower card is a little bit more scary to pull because that means like something massive is about to happen or like be destroyed, or you're basically going to go through some sort of upheaval. Death usually just means that like a situation or a relationship or something is ending. So sometimes the death card can be good because you want your current situation to end. So there's other celebrities who also have an association with the number 13. The famous singer Seal, he has a phobia of the number 13. He considers it extremely unlucky, and apparently he's even known to avoid staying in hotels that have 13 floors, period. Stephen King, obviously a horror author who, talks about fear, superstition, all of those different themes, he has said that he has, and I'm going to butcher this, but it's like trichodectagophobia, and it's a fear of the number 13, which is just so funny that like he would be scared of the number 13. Now, culturally, I also found this very interesting. In Italy, 13 has no negative connotation or like reputation around it. And the unlucky number in Italy, I was reading, is 17. And this is considered to be unlucky because the Roman numeral XVII can be rearranged to spell VIXI, which means I have lived in Latin, which implies death. Now, the last thing about the number 13 is that it is kind of related to the Illuminati. That's right. We're not even 15 minutes in and I'm talking about the Illuminati, okay? But the number 13 is very associated with the Illuminati. Obviously, Illuminati is this supposed secret society of elite people that control world events from kind of like behind the shadows. And people use different references to tie the number 13 to the Illuminati. So there's 13 steps on the pyramid of the back of the US $1 bill, which honestly, I'm going to write this down. We should do an episode on the dollar bill. Because when I think about it, like, why the fuck is there pyramids on the dollar bill of the United States? Like, there aren't any pyramids here. Anyway, people say that there were also the 13 original colonies in the US, and there's just other uses of 13 in US symbolism, which everybody ties it in to the great vast Illuminati. Okay, let's move on to the next celebrity here. Michael Jordan, you know that 23 is his number. Most people know that because they pay attention to sports, and I know it because Miley Cyrus did the song 23, J's on My Feet with, who was it? Mike Will Made It? Yeah. Okay, I wish I knew more about sports, but I do know that Michael Jordan, obviously his jersey was 23, and he took up this number on his jersey at a very early age, like back when he was in high school. So his older brother named Larry was already on the team in high school, and he had the number 45 on his jersey. So Michael Jordan just split that in half, and he was like, okay, I'm just going to round up, and 23 is going to be my jersey. So then he was playing at University of North Carolina, and he kept the 23 jersey, and this is when he kind of started to make a name for himself, and he earned the shot to be in the NBA. So he joined the Chicago Bulls, and he kept his shirt number for 9 years, although once he had to wear number 12 for a game because his jersey went missing. I would have been spooked. I would have been like, I can't play this game. Anyway, then he retired from the NBA for a little bit in October 1993. He played baseball for a little bit. There's a conspiracy theory that you guys probably know, but we could do for an episode. Why did he really retire? Did it have to do with gambling? There's other theories about why he played baseball for a bit. Then he came back, and it is nice. When he retired, the Bulls, they also retired the number 23 shirt in honor of him, which is sweet. But then he came back, and he wore number 45 the first season that he came back, which, as you remember, was his older brother's jersey. However, after just one loss playing in the 45 jersey, he switched back to lucky number 23. So I'm feeling a little bit of superstition around him. What's interesting too is that the number 23, we're going to talk, there's a lot of other celebrities who also have it as like a number that's very close to them, but there is an entire theory. There's something called the 23 Enigma. And this is, I swear to God, it has its own Wikipedia page. And this is a belief that the number 23 is very, very significant. And we see this in pop culture a variety of ways. So the 23 Enigma was actually written and kind of came to be in 1977. There was an article that relates the following anecdote. Quote, I first heard of the 23 Enigma from William S. Burroughs, the author of Naked Lunch and Nova Express. According to Burroughs, he had known a certain Captain Clark around 1960 who once bragged that he had been sailing 23 years without an accident. That very day, his ship had an accident that killed him and everybody else on board. Okay, this is now the skeptic in me. I'm like, so what, somebody wrote it down before everybody died? maybe he like told it over breakfast and then they sailed off and died. Anyway. So furthermore, when Burroughs was thinking about this example of the irony of the gods killing him after he bragged about 23 years, of sailing without an accident, a bulletin on the radio announced the crash of an airliner in Florida. The pilot of the airline was also named Captain Clark, and the flight was Flight 23. So this kind of spurred the idea of the 23 enigma, and it basically is viewed as like an example of selection bias and confirmation bias, but it comes up a lot. So there was even a movie made called The Number 23. It was put out in 2007, and it stars Jim Carrey. And it's a story about a man who becomes obsessed with the number 23 while reading a book with the same title that kind of seems to be about his life. So long before the film, apparently Jim Carrey kind of was into the number 23. If you haven't listened, it's a public episode. We did one all about Jim Carrey. He is a interesting guy. So I could see this. So then obviously he did the movie, The Number 23, and he was so impacted by the number 23 and being in this movie that he changed the name of his production company. It used to be Pitbull Productions, and he changed it to JC23 because after this movie, he also started to believe in the supremacy of the number 23. There's also another famous athlete, David Beckham. So he has also always been fascinated by the number 23 and how it relates to everything in his life. So when he joined Real Madrid, his jersey number was changed from 7 to 23. I feel like I would do that too, right? If I'm going to pick a jersey number and I'm in sport, I'm going to make it 23. All right, let's talk about Beyonce and the number 4. So Beyonce apparently is really into numerology, and her lucky number is 4. So both her and Jay-Z were born on the 4th. She was born September 4th and he was born December 4th. They have 4 tattooed on both of their hands. And then she gave her daughter the middle name Ivy, which if you think about it in Roman numerals, IV, that's 4. So she also said this too at her Live in Roseland Elements of the 4 show, which is a series of concerts that, of course, lasted 4 nights. She went a little bit into the logic of like why this number is so important in her personal life. She also said, on April 4th, 2008, 8 divided by 2 is 4. Jay-Z put a ring on it. Now also, when Destiny's Child released their first album in February 1998, there were 4 members, and Beyonce was only 17 years old at the time. How did I not know that Destiny's Child has 4 members at the beginning? I always thought that there were 3. But yeah, Beyonce's mom as well is also born on the 4th of the month, January 4th. Her 4th studio album as a solo artist was titled 4. And that was the first album that she released as her own manager. And the number 4 is a very foundational, powerful number. I've always really liked the number 4. It just feels, and maybe this is my neurodivergence coming out, but it feels like a steady number. 7 feels a little bit chic and French to me. 5 feels like family, like a good group, like a crew of friends is 5. Like, I don't know, certain numbers just kind of give you different vibes, But 4 is very foundational. And you see this many places. We have 4 directions, north, south, east, west. We have 4 seasons throughout the month, winter, spring, fall, summer. So 4 represents a lot of material things. Even if you take like a 2D triangle and then you add a 3rd dimension, well, now you have 4 sides of something, right? So it represents like the material world and things that you can touch and look at. Now, speaking about other cultures, we were talking about how 13 isn't unlucky in Italy, but 17 is. Apparently, there is something called tetraphobia in Chinese society, and that is kind of the fear of the number 4. And that is because the way I think that 4 is pronounced sounds similar to the Chinese word for die. So I was researching a little bit about this, and they were saying that number culture was very important in the worldview of ancient China. So they used to do these divination rituals where they would have these bundles of yarrow stalks back in the Zhou dynasty. And you would take a handful of these stalks and count the number to see if there was an odd or even number of stalks, and then that would predict good or bad luck, which is really cool. Then they were also saying in Chinese folk traditions and traditional wedding ceremonies, 4 is kind of considered a lucky number because in a lot of local wedding customs, there's 4 kinds of offerings: red dates, red sorghum, red candles, and a red silk fabric that's placed on the wedding table. And then the bride would also wear 4 reds, consisting of a red shirt, red pants, red pair of shoes, and red socks for the occasion, which would symbolize the 4 happinesses of marriage, which is having plenty of food, clothing, prosperity, and posterity. And even that is so cool. I know that red is definitely a lucky number in China, but over here, right, in the States, we do something old, something borrowed, and something blue, which is why you sometimes see brides with like blue shoes on or blue earrings or something like that. So then this person was saying, however, today in contemporary China, after market liberalization in the post 1970s, the economic life kind of underwent a lot of different changes, and the number 8 became more and more popular because it has a similar pronunciation to the word fortune, and 4 because it kind of sounds like the word dead or death in a lot of different Chinese dialects. Convinced a lot of businesses to take away displaying the number 4 in like different customer facing areas. So apparently in healthcare, hospitality, and transportation related sectors, it's like taboo to have the word 4 or the number. Like you're going to try to swap it out with something else if you can. Now, this person was also saying that similarly in Japan, 4 and 9 are kind of taboo in business settings because their pronunciation in Japanese correlates with death for 4 and bitterness for the number 9. Some people also say that the number 9 sounds like the word for pain or suffering. So pain, suffering, bitterness. So that's why they don't want to use it, which is interesting. All right, Michael Jackson and the number 7. I went on such a deep dive with the number 7. Like the number 7 now means a lot to me. Like I think that it's pretty crazy. So apparently Michael Jackson was always superstitious and he preferred the number 1 and 7. And it's theorized that this is because there are 7 letters in both his first and last name. I think that 7 also has to do with his birth order in the family. There's a lot of different. And once again, it's like, is it correlation or causation? Maybe he just picked the number and then everybody on the internet came up with reasons for why. But he always preferred the numbers 1 and 7. So the number 7, when you look into it, it's just one of those fascinating things because it's used for so many titles and purposes, and you probably won't even realize it until we start talking about it, just how much airtime the number 7 gets. So for example, the 7 wonders of the world, right? Even James Bond, 007, you kind of remember that 7 number. There's 7 days in a week. There's 7 colors in a rainbow. A lot of people in marketing understand the power and the significance of the number 7 because they use it for a lot of their titles, the 7 habits of highly effective people. They could have made it 8 or 6, but there's probably a reason why they did 7. The 7 husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Snow White and the 7 dwarves. Taylor Swift, Miss 13, she has a song named 7. Also, a lot of articles that you read, when in doubt, more people click on listicles that have 7 in the title. So like 7 ways to organize your pantry, 7 ways to see if your ex is a narcissist. When you start looking at different listicles and observing it, very rarely do they say 4 or 10. It's usually some sort of wacky number, like a 7 or a 9. So of course, too, we were saying the 7 wonders of the world, the bucket list for every world traveler. That's been a thing for a while. And there's also significance of 7 in almost every major religion. So in the Old Testament, right, the world was created in 6 days, and then God rested on the 7th, the Sabbath, on Sunday. So that's the basis of the 7-day week that we use to this day. And then in the New Testament, the number 7 kind of symbolizes the unity of the 4 corners of earth with the Holy Trinity. 4 + 3 = 7. The number 7 is also in the book of Revelation. There's 7 churches, 7 angels, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 stars. The Quran speaks of 7 heavens, and Muslim pilgrims walk to the Kaaba in Mecca 7 times. In Hinduism, there's 7 higher worlds and 7 underworlds, and in Buddhism, the newborn Buddha rises and takes 7 steps. It's also associated, maybe for those reasons, with luck and magical properties. So obviously, if you're playing the slots, right, and you ding, 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 you get 7 across, you get the jackpot. There's also a lot of myths and legends throughout different cultures about the seventh son of a seventh son having magical powers of both good and evil. And this is something in Irish folklore, the child of the seventh son of the seventh son is believed to have like magical healing powers. And I wonder if some people use this for fantasy books or for pop culture. Like, for example, we did an episode all about Dune and Dune 2 here on the Public podcast, but Paul Atreides, right? They were like waiting because they were like, we have to go through enough birth lines and lineage. So then that way, this particular guy has sons, but it needs to go through the right number of generations before, Paul Atreides or the El Gaib or whatever, the fancy guy, the magical guy from Dune. And perhaps I didn't read the book, but maybe he was supposed to be the seventh son of the seventh son, since a lot of cultures kind of talk about that. The number 7 is also really important for our memory capacity. So in 1956, George Miller of Harvard University, he wrote what is today considered one of the classic papers in psychology. And he demonstrated that most people can retain 7 items of information in their short-term memory. And that is why phone numbers in the US and many other countries have 7 digits, right? Without the area code. So that is actually why that's the length of the telephone number, because they did all these studies and they were like, okay, it's exactly 7 things that most people can retain in their short-term memory. 7 is also the most popular number. There was a mathematician named Alex Bellos, and he asked 44,000 people to name their favorite number, and over 4,000 of them named the number 7 far and away more than any other number. So, for example, now you have a hack if you're playing like a game with friends, and it's like pick a number 1 through 10, I'm guessing it, you're best off probably trying to guess 7, because that's usually what people pick most. All right, Kylie Jenner, her lucky number is 222. And this was something interesting. Her mom, Kris Jenner, went on Ellen DeGeneres' show and was talking about how her newborn son was born. And apparently he was born on February 2nd, and the date was 2222. And Kris Jenner was saying, like, it's so good. It's an angel number. Angel numbers are usually numbers where 3 or 4 of the same number are repeated. So like when you see 1111 on a clock or 444, for me, I always see 421. I don't know what it means. Sometimes I think that something special will happen to me on April 21st. But like anytime I look at anything, I just looked at the timestamp right now. It was 24, not 421, but I always see 421. So some people have these angel numbers. And apparently, Kris Jenner was saying 2222 has always been Kylie's angel number. And a friend of hers got her a necklace with that number, and she was wearing it when she gave birth. So how crazy that has been her angel number for, obviously much longer before her son was born. And then he happened to be born 2222. That would like really freak me out. Yeah, so Kris Jenner was saying she's had the necklace for like 5 years. So how crazy is it that her son was born on that day? And then Ellen said that Portia, her wife, her favorite number is also 2222. And Ellen DeGeneres' is 1111, which we're going to talk about. So in terms of angel numbers and what they mean, 222 is usually a good sign for manifestation when you see it. And I don't know how people come up with these angel numbers and like what they mean and stuff, but it's kind of regarded in the woo-woo community, of which I like to be a part of, that when you see the number 222, it's kind of a sign from the universe that you're on the right path, that your dreams and your goals are manifesting, and that the universe is going to align to support you with whatever you're doing. So I would imagine for Kylie, if her number is 2222 and then her son is born 2222, she would probably take that, or at least I would if I was her, as a massive sign that like, I am meant to be a mother. This is what I should be doing. This is my true goal and path in life, which I think is nice because, she said before that she really doesn't like being a celebrity. She doesn't relate a lot to it. She doesn't feel right doing it. And we found out in her birth video, or like when she was announcing her pregnancy, that she's always wanted to be a mom, which I think was surprising to a lot of us. And she's mentioned this on the show. Also, when she celebrated her anniversary of 11 years with Portia, she shouted out like, oh my God, like 11 years together, because it's my favorite number. And it impacted her so much that she actually founded a record label and called it 1111. And did you know that Ellen DeGeneres put together a record label? Because I certainly did not. She did this in 2010, and apparently it was, this honestly kind of sounds a little bit sinister, but maybe I'm only saying that because now we know like Ellen's reputation. But she put the record label together because she wanted to concentrate on lesser known artists. And apparently she would look for like videos of performances on YouTube. I've been seeing a lot of tweets saying, like bring back the Ellen show, because some of these people who have viral moments, they're not supposed to be famous. They're just supposed to go on the Ellen show, get a free car, and then be done with, like Charlie bit my finger. He's supposed to go on the Ellen show. He's not supposed to fly out to Los Angeles and start a podcast. I think a lot of people are thinking about the Hawk Tuah girl when they say this. Anyway, so Ellen said that she started this record company and called it 1111 because she sees the number on clocks a lot. And when she found Grayson Chance, she found him on the 11th, and his soccer jersey has the number 11. I don't know, all these different differences and stuff. Now, 1111 does have good vibes around it. Obviously, you're always supposed to make a wish when the clock does 1111, but in numerology, it's considered a master number, and it represents a lot of intuition, incitement, and enlightenment. So people think that when you see 1111, that's a time that the universe is kind of open to receiving your intentions. So that's why you're supposed to make a wish when you see 1111 on the clock. And some people think that 1111 also represents twin flames. So if you believe in twin flames in the spiritual community, 11 is kind of associated with that because it's two people who are deeply connected on that soul level, one pair meeting the other one pair. Now, it's not always considered a good thing. You know how we were saying that 12 is that perfect number, which is why 13 is so unlucky? In some cultures, they do the same thing with 13, where because 11 is one away from 12, they think that it's considered unlucky. They also think that 10 is a very perfect number. It's associated with like completion. So to be 11 is to go beyond completion, and it represents having like too much or being imbalanced. There's also a lot of different examples in culture. So World War I, when it was ended, it was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. So there was a lot of like numerical significance there. Also, I think obviously with September 11th, it is 9/11, but I think the number 11, that's just what people think of sometimes. Now, there are a lot of conspiracy theorists who kind of look at the numerology of 9/11 because I think they say like, what is it? Yeah, 9/11, when you add it together, 9 + 1 + 1 = 11, which like, what the fuck does that mean? You know what I mean? I don't know. It was Flight 11. That was one of the planes that crashed into the World Trade Center, and it had 92 passengers on the plane, where 9 + 2 = 11. And then obviously the World Trade Center buildings themselves formed a giant 11 because they're two, tall buildings next to each other. So I guess some people think that like, this is evidence that it's an inside job or it's planned or orchestrated. Obviously I'm game for a lot of fun conspiracy theories. This one I just don't get because I feel like you could add up almost anything to make something work. Obviously 9 + 11. Some of those are a little bit more on the nose, but I feel like then you could be like the age of the pilot when you add it together. But if it's not his age, then it's his mother's age, or maybe it's his birthday that you add together, or maybe it's the serial number code on one of the planes, or maybe like the plane and then you like look at the, the CEO and his age and stuff. I just feel like there's a little bit too much you could do there. And like, for what? Things add up to something. So I personally don't get it. All right, there's also other fun facts about numbers that kind of have power to them. Obviously, we know that pi is 3.14, and then there's other numbers that come after it. I'm not a math whiz, okay? But not only is 3.14 the starting numbers of pi, it's also Albert Einstein's birthday, March 14th. Isn't that crazy? The number 69 is very significant. A lot of manifesting. The next time you're in the 69 position, manifest into your partner's crotch and like whisper your desire. And maybe it'll come true. All right, 27 is interesting in pop culture because you've probably heard of the 27 Club. I believe we covered this over on Patreon like a year ago. But the 27 Club is this, what would you call it? Not conspiracy theory, but like superstition. And it refers to a group of famous musicians and artists who all died at the age of 27. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse. You have some rappers and singers kind of reference this, like, I hope that I get to 28, like 27. They're all a little bit scared of it. Some conspiracy theorists think that there's something kind of sinister or supernatural about this pattern. I'm sure the Illuminati is involved somehow. I think a lot of them did die from drug overdoses. But of course, people who believe in the 27 Club think that it's like part of a larger conspiracy. Maybe it's like a sacrifice or the pressures of fame get you at that moment, something like that. Now, Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers from the neighborhood, he was a Presbyterian minister, by the way, and he weighed himself every morning. Once again, it's giving neurodivergent. And his weight was always usually pretty consistent, 143. And he considered that a message from God. 143, the 1 representing I, the 4 representing love, and the 3 representing you. Which, 2 things about that. Number 1, I think Mr. Rogers was suffering from orthorexia or something. What's that thing where like you're obsessed with being some sort of eating disorder, like weighing yourself every day and being like, oh, if I hit my goal weight, that's God saying that he loves me. But if I'm over or below it, God doesn't love me that day. Also, what's very interesting is that if you listen to our Swift-Gron episode, which is, a theory about how Taylor Swift dated Diana Agron. And before you say that I'm crazy, listen to the episode because there's a lot of interesting stuff on there that I think, makes it true. Then you'll know that Swift-Gron also has a 143 message between Diana Agron and allegedly Taylor Swift. The number 666, you probably know that that's like an evil, demonic number associated with the devil. And you might be wondering why, where did that come from? It comes from the book of Revelation. And in it, there's some sort of passage where they say that 666 is the number of the beast, which is interpreted as like Antichrist or devil or Satan or something like that. Now, speaking about numbers in different countries, 39 is an unlucky number in Afghanistan because apparently it's associated with a derogatory term that implies prostitution. So who knows? What is it? 17 in Italy, 4 in China, 9 in Japan, 39 in Afghanistan, 13 in the States. Now, I think that the reputation and the narrative of certain numbers is kind of interesting because we cement it even further into people's minds when we are engaged in pop culture. So for example, 13 Reasons Why, that was that, I think, Netflix series put together by Selena Gomez and someone else. And the girl writes out tapes, I think, for like 13 different people. And then she dies by suicide. And having the title of that show be 13 Reasons Why, it kind of already leads with that 13 number of something sad, something unlucky, something devastating to happen. 12 Reasons Why, that kind of sound, if somebody just said the title 12 Reasons Why, I'd be like, ooh, that could be a book about self-help and improvement. 13 Reasons Why gives it a little bit more of like a somber, grief-stricken type of tone, which is interesting. Now, James Bond, of course, 007, it's interesting that he's this like famous spy, or he's like the best spy, like he's the number one guy. And 7 is the most popular number. So maybe that's why, 008 or 009 wouldn't hit as well as 007. Even with Stranger Things, of course, the character 11 is named after a number that she was assigned in this like experimental lab where they were doing fucking, I don't know, trials and shit on her to make her special. But having her name be 11, it has that idea of 1111, these mystery numbers, something that you wish on for the clock, something that's unusual, rare, repeating, doesn't happen often. If she was named 10 or 12, I don't think that it would hit as well, but 11 adds that kind of element of mystique to it. Now, there's also numbers that are used for certain rules. For example, if you're in comedy, you're going to do the rule of 3. And this is kind of this fundamental principle in comedy that enhances humor by establishing a pattern of 1, 2, 3 and sticking with the pattern for 1 and 2. And then you subvert it with an unexpected twist on the third. And once you notice the rule of 3, you'll see this in comedy and script writing and TV shows all the time. So this could be anything where it's like, I went to the store and I bought apples, oranges, and a pet rock. And it's like, oh, you did the crazy thing on the third. Or you could even do this for a lot of jokes and like knock knock jokes, etc. So a doctor, a lawyer, and a clown walk into a bar. The doctor says, I can help with your health. The lawyer says, I can help with your legal issues. And then the clown says, I can help you laugh at your problems. Ha 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 ha. So once you kind of start to notice this, anytime somebody tells a guy walks into a bar joke or a knock knock, there's usually some sort of rule of three incorporated into the joke. 3. What an interesting number. Now, I tried to look up conspiracy theories on numbers because obviously we like to talk about that a little bit. The number 47, some people say, has conspiracy elements around it. So apparently the CIA was founded in 1947, and some people believe that because the CIA was founded in 1947, they slip 47 into news stories to kind of signal things to other agents. Ooh la la. So a lot of people say that if there's like a fake victim or something fake happened, they'll say that the victim's birth date is April 7th, 1988. So then that way you get like the 4-7 in there, and then 47 signals something. I don't know. It's weird shit. There was this Highland Park shooter. It was for like a 4th of July parade, and he apparently had a bunch of face tattoos with numbers, and he was obsessed with the number 47. But I think a lot of these are just kind of coincidental. Okay, and then lastly, just because I had so much fun learning about the lore and the history of all these different numbers, we are going to talk about some classic superstitions and where the origin of these came from and what it really means. So some of these you've heard, and then I did some deep digging into some very like niche superstitions that you might only hear about if it's part of your culture, or maybe you don't know about it at all. So we're going to start with the common ones. Breaking a mirror brings 7 years of bad luck. I mean, I feel like we see this all the time. Even in like teen movies, it's like you open up your locker and the mirror falls and it's like, I was already having a bad day. I feel like I've seen that so many times. So this dates back to ancient Rome, and the Romans believed that mirrors not only showed you somebody's physical appearance, but also their soul. So if the mirror broke, it was thought that your soul could be damaged or trapped. And there was this idea that comes from the Romans where they thought that life kind of renews itself every 7 years. So it would take that long for your soul to heal if you broke a mirror, and you would have to deal with 7 years of bad luck. There is kind of like not a rumor, but like I don't want to say misinformation because I feel like that's so like narky to say, but like there is a playground rumor that people believe that your skin replaces itself every 7 years. And I feel like maybe that's where it comes from as well. But I looked into it, and no, our body does not replace itself every 7 years. This is a misconception because the true fact is that your cells regenerate on average every 7 to 10 years. So I think people heard that fact and then kind of ran with it. Your skin cells, however, they are replaced every few weeks, and you lose up to 500 million skin cells every day, which is disgusting and makes me want to like vacuum so hard right now. But yeah, it's a misunderstood fact. The body does not replace itself every 7 years. Walking under a ladder, very bad to do, very superstitious. And this comes from the symbolism of a ladder leaning against a wall, which forms a triangle, right? And in Christian symbolism, the triangle represents the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So seen as walking through that triangle, aka the ladder against a wall, was some sort of crime that people thought would bring misfortune. And then another theory about this is that ancient Egyptian beliefs, when a ladder was leaning against a wall, it was seen as a way to reach the gods, and disrupting that pathway was considered bad luck. So if you're a member of our Patreon, we did 2 episodes actually about the UFO conference that I went to a couple months ago. And one of the talks was all about the Egyptians and the star walkers and how they would kind of have these like sunroofs built into certain tombs that would reflect the stars because perhaps they wanted to astral project, or they believed that their soul would be among the stars, aka the gods up in the sky when they died. Really, really cool stuff. The superstition of having to knock on wood for good luck, apparently that has pagan origins because a lot of ancient civilizations, including the Celts, believe that spirits and gods resided in the trees. So by knocking on wood, you were either calling on the spirits for protection or sending them like a little thank you for your good fortune. So this has just kind of evolved. I mean, I knock on wood. I'm going to knock on wood on my lamp right now. I knock on wood all the time, and I had no idea that it was for that. Which, to be fair, I think is also kind of weird because if the spirits and the gods reside in the trees, knocking on it is like sending a little earthquake or like waking them up from a nap. I feel like it would piss them off. I feel like instead you should like rub wood or something. Friday the 13th, obviously we talked about the fear of the number 13 and why it's unlucky. But you combine Friday with 13 because apparently since the Middle Ages, Fridays have been considered unlucky. This must have been when capitalism was not abound. And this is because of the association of the crucifixion of Jesus. And people believe that that took place on a Friday. So you combine 13 with Friday, and it's a very dark and ominous day. The superstition of black cats crossing your path being bad. So this also came about in Europe in the Middle Ages. And at that time, black cats were associated with witches and the devil, mainly because there's a few reasons for this. And I'm working on an episode all about cat lore because I think that this winter, I might foster either a cat or a dog. And I just think cats have so much like cool mystical stuff about them, and it's just very interesting. But cats, they kind of have like a nocturnal nature. The color black is linked with like death and the occult, but some people were saying that cats got this reputation during the Middle Ages because they would hang out with women. Okay, I'm just like generalizing here. It'll be better when I do my cat lore episode. But explaining in like a way that you might want to research afterwards, this is a rumor that I heard, it's that cats would like hang out with women and the cats would eat like the rodents and all of the things that were spreading the plague. So then these women wouldn't get sick, and then they would look at the woman that's sick and be like, she's a witch and she has a cat with her, so cats are witchy. When really cats were, killing the stuff that was bad, and then people with cats were therefore healthier because of it. Cats have such a horrible reputation, and like I just think whatever, I'm going to save it for the cat episode, but I think cats are pretty cool. All right, the next superstition is throwing salt over your shoulder. And spilling salt has always been considered something very, very bad luck to do ever since ancient times. This is probably because salt was like a valuable commodity. It would be like spilling gold. You don't want to do it. Now, in Christian tradition, this is kind of also connected to the Last Supper. I mean, we get a lot of things from the Last Supper. So apparently Judas spilled salt, and this symbolized his betrayal of Jesus. So if you spill salt or something happens, to counteract the bad luck, you are supposed to take a pinch of salt. The salt that you spilled, by the way. I think a lot of people are like, oh my God, I spilled salt. Let me go back to the main source and throw it over my shoulder. No. Technically, you are supposed to take a pinch of the salt that's already spilled on the floor, which I guess comes, right, from these ancient times. You don't want to waste more salt. And then you're supposed to throw it over your left shoulder. And you do that because you are blinding the devil who is lurking behind your left shoulder. So you throw the salt into the devil's eyes, and he just happens to be behind your left shoulder like a fucking parrot or something. I just always find that wild. Like sometimes people nowadays were like, oh my God, everyone's so crazy. Like people are wild and getting stupider. Like you go to the airport and like nobody knows how to go through. Dude, back then people were throwing salt to blind the devil that lurked behind their left shoulder. Like we think conspiracy theories are on the rise now. They're probably at an all-time low. Like back then, which is absolutely wild. Okay, opening up an umbrella indoors. So this superstition, people think, comes from the belief that opening an umbrella indoors would insult the sun god. I don't know, especially in cultures where umbrellas were used to first like protect against the sun. So doing it indoors would be kind of like a middle finger to the sun gods. They also think this could be traced back to Victorian England. And that was when it was believed that if you opened up an umbrella indoors, you're going to get bad luck because obviously, you could like break something. I don't know. Why would anyone open up an umbrella indoors? Just to like test it out? But yeah, I never open up an umbrella indoors. I believe in that one. and it seems like they kind of derive from different cultures, which is cool. All right, so the first one, tucking in your thumbs while you're passing a graveyard. This is a Japanese superstition, and apparently you do it to protect your parents from harm. So in Japanese, the word for thumb translates to parent finger. So when you hide your thumbs, it's kind of thought as protecting your parents from death. And what is it about, like, even step on a crack, break your mother's back? There's a lot of things that children are supposed to do to like keep their parents safe as like an interesting form of superstition. We have another one, wearing red underwear on New Year's Eve. This is great. This is fun for everyone. Like, slap on the red undies. So they say that in some cultures, especially in Italy and Spain, it's believed that wearing red undies on New Year's Eve will bring good luck for the coming new year. And isn't it also Spanish to eat like grapes under the table or something like that? I love all of this stuff. I think it's so fun. So red is associated with vitality and energy and life. And if you wear it, it says that maybe you're going to attract love, passion, prosperity, all of these good things in the new year. And some people say that this could also have roots in ancient Roman practices because red was worn to ward off evil spirits. And I'm kind of thinking like we could do an episode all about the lore of colors, the psychology of them, what they mean. Red obviously is a very good symbol of like luck in China, but I think red here in the States, first of all, like Republican, like red versus blue, who decided to pick that? But it's also seen as more of like a sexy, like passionate color. And then also the psychology. I mean, I know a few facts, but they said that if you want to go on a diet, some people will paint their kitchen purple or blue because apparently in purple, not a lot of foods naturally are purple. Like a lot of, green obviously is very nature derived, but you don't see purple that often in nature. And I know some people right now are like eggplants, plums, lilacs. Like, of course, there's some purple in nature, but looking at purple and blue kind of calms you and it doesn't really stimulate your hunger. The colors that do stimulate your hunger are red, yellow, and orange, which is why when you look at almost any fast food company, McDonald's, Burger King, Chick-fil-A, Wendy's, they all have red, yellow, maybe orange in them because they're trying to stimulate people's hunger. And I think Taco Bell goes against the grain, right? Aren't they like a purple logo? I like Taco Bell. Quiero live more, live Moss. All right, planting garlic to ward off evil spirits. The conspiracy theorists were going big time ham in medieval Europe because this is where this kind of came about. Garlic being used as a protective charm. And some people thought that garlic would ward off vampires. Some people thought that garlic would repel evil spirits, keep bad luck away from you. So people would either carry it with them to like protect themselves from evil forces, or they would plant it around their home. Which honestly is kind of slay, like having a ring of garlic surrounding your home, like kind of a fun idea. I will say garlic does help your immune system, I think. Like it makes you feel healthier. I always have a lot of garlic and stuff when I'm feeling a little bit ragged down. So maybe there are some legs to that one. Now, this is an interesting superstition I hadn't heard of before, whistling indoors and how it invites evil spirits. So this comes about in Russia and Eastern European countries. It's believed that whistling indoors can invite evil spirits or bring financial ruin. And this superstition comes from the idea that when you whistle, you're calling for the wind, and the wind could have like spirits come in with it. It could invite chaos into the home. And in some cultures, whistling is associated with summoning spirits, which of course could be bad if you do it indoors. Now, I kind of see that. I also think that this might have come from one very, very creative parent in Russia or Eastern Europe, where their kids learned how to whistle and they were whistling indoors and it was bugging the shit out of them. And they were like, you know what? There's a reason why you can't whistle indoors, because you're going to invite evil spirits and financial ruin. Yep, because you're calling the winds in or something like that. I mean, I could see myself doing that as a parent. And maybe, we could still do it today. You could be like, Coco Melon is actually so bad and it invites a lot of evil, so we can't watch Coco Melon in the house. I'm so sorry. This superstition that if you sweep over someone's feet, it dooms you to a life of singleness. And that's something that I've seen in movies before. Like if somebody's sweeping with a broom, it's like you can't go over someone's foot. That's going to be a bad time. So this is common in southern United States and different parts of Africa. It's believed that if you sweep over someone's feet with a broom, they will never get married. And the origin of this belief is because sweeping symbolizes like clearing away or removing something. So if you do it over someone's feet, you're kind of pushing away, clearing away, or removing their possibility of marriage. This next one, I have never heard of this before, but I'm about to adopt it because I think it's really cool. It's superstitious. It's bad luck to give a wallet or a purse without money. So they say that in various cultures, if you give somebody an empty wallet, purse, or bag as a gift, it's going to give them bad luck because it kind of symbolizes that the recipient is going to have financial difficulties. So in order to counteract that, before you give a wallet or a purse as a gift, you're supposed to put at least a small amount of money inside of it. So then that way their financial future is like full of lots of money. I think that's so fun. I just think that's great. The only thing is like, God, I mean, maybe this is me getting older, but I feel like most things I own, I buy all of it for myself. So the idea, I don't know, we have become so individualistic that even like me giving somebody a wallet or a purse, I would be so nervous that it's not their style or their taste and it's like a waste of money and I would offend them, that I feel like I've gotten much more safe with my gift giving as of late, which is kind of sad because the whole point of giving a gift is that you're like, oh my God, I never would have picked this for myself. Like, I love it. Like, thanks for picking this for me. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just getting a little bit hypothetical here, but I feel like that's happened a lot. Even so many girls will go with their spouse and pick out the ring themselves and like design it and know exactly what it is. I just feel like when I was younger, gift giving was looked at a little bit differently than it is now. You know what? I'm going to ponder on that. Okay, the next superstition, bird poop on you. I'm I'm laughing because in this sentence, poop is a noun, but it's funny when you think of poop as a verb. Bird poop on you. Bird poop on you as sign of good luck. But really it's bird poop on you is a sign of good luck. Okay. I don't know, I'm getting a little bit loopy here. Okay. In some cultures, especially in Russia and Turkey, if a bird poops on you, they consider it a sign of good luck or having like money in the future. And this kind of comes from the idea that birds pooping is kind of rare and unexpected. So if you experience this rare misfortune, then you're due karmically to balance things out with a stroke of good luck. I have been around 2 friends and they have had a bird poop on them. And when I tell you, I almost pee my pants laughing each time. It is the funniest thing when a bird poops on someone. And then you always have to say, oh, you have good luck coming on. Well, you hope that they do, because normally they have to run into a restaurant bathroom and like get it out of their hair. Like, I just think it's funny. Okay. The superstition, dropping scissors means that a fight is going to happen. So in some cultures, especially in Scotland, if you drop a pair of scissors, it's a sign or a prediction that there's going to be an impending argument or conflict. And some people think that this kind of comes from the ideas that scissors, they're a sharp object. So this would symbolize like cutting ties or severing something. And then the sharpness of the scissors means that you're going to be in a fight soon where people are going to be using very sharp words or like bickering or fighting, which is interesting. All right, we have 2 last ones here. Number 1, chewing gum at night. And this is a superstition from Turkey that if you chew gum at night, you are actually chewing the flesh of the dead. So they say that this belief kind of comes from the origins of the fear of the dark and the unknown, paired with the idea that nighttime is like spirit time. This is when the spirits in the afterlife are awake and alert. So they're kind of warning you to avoid doing activities that could disturb the spirits that are awake at night, and it could be seen as disrespectful to them. All right, and then the last one here, that counting stars will lead to your misfortune. So in parts of the Philippines, it's believed that if you count stars at night, this is going to shorten your lifespan. So this kind of has roots in ancient beliefs where people believed, and the Egyptians definitely believe this, if you want to check out our Patreon episode, that the stars represent the souls of the dead and departed and different gods. So if you lay awake at night and you're counting the stars, it's kind of seen as tempting fate or inviting misfortune because you're kind of making an attempt to like determine your fate or play God or mess around with divine order. So you're not supposed to count the stars. So anyway, now we know a little bit about the history and the origins of all of these superstitions and why numbers are lucky or unlucky. I just find all of it so interesting. I just love being a little bit woo-woo with all of this stuff. So thank you for hanging out with me. If you are a listener of Fluently Forward, we are going to be off for the next 2 weeks for the public episodes. The next 2 weeks, there will be no Monday public episodes. It's my first vacation in 2.5 years since I started doing this full time. However, it's not totally a vacation because there's always a weekly episode over on Patreon. So I will have Patreon episodes going up while I'm away. And if you're curious about any of the past Patreon episodes, let me give you a little teaser. So I just put up one that was all about internet subculture series, and we focused on furries specifically. We talked about the furry community, how it came to be, why cartoon animals are so very sexualized. You might have seen my TikTok about this, but like when you dive into it, female cartoon animals, they do like wicked things to them. They make them very, very sexual, and which celebrities I think could be a furry, okay? Just speculating. We also did a very fun one all about dreaming over on Patreon. So we talked about prophetic dreams throughout history. Who had them? Julius Caesar's wife, Abraham Lincoln, Salvador Dali, the guy who made the periodic table of elements, he actually dreamt that. So we went all into that, and we talked about sexsomnia, sleep crime that happens, and different conspiracy theories that are related to dreams, which was really fun. The one we did the week before was all about King of the Amazon jungle, Jeffrey Bezos and Lauren Sanchez. So we talked a little bit about how Jeffrey Bezos came to be, his blind items, because he's getting a little bit messy, conspiracy theories around Amazon, how they're trying to pay people $10 to get an image of your palm print and what that means. The week before, we did an episode all about the history of horniness, and that was really fun. It was all about like, basically when sex started to be demonized, because obviously the cave people were, humping and bumping in the caves, but now sex is kind of seen as something taboo. So when did the rise of purity culture and sex being seen as something that needs to be controlled and shamed, came about with religion and the purity culture, and we talk about that. And then we also talk about the ways that men and women experience horniness differently, how you can kind of ramp things up with your sexual drive, basically, supplements, exercise, different things that people do. There's even shots that some women can take that get you feeling revved up about 30 minutes after you inject it. It was pretty interesting stuff. We talked about Julia Fox being out as a lesbian, and then we had this discussion all about celebrity celibacy, late in life lesbians, different like connections between them. We did the Fountain of Youth episode. This was really fun. Basically, the billionaires like Peter Nygaard and that other guy whose name I'm forgetting, but all of the tactics that they've done to try to stay young forever and what we can learn from them, and different studies and companies all the way from like Google to Amazon who have these like giant think tanks, and they're trying to make people live younger and younger. So basically, what does that mean for us for the future? What can we learn from these billionaires? And why are some of them being so very sketchy with the stem cells that they use? Anyway, that was just from the last month. And we have, I think, over 100 episodes on Patreon if you want to go check that out while we are off. So thank you for hanging out with me for this superstitious episode. And I will see you guys in September for another episode of Fluently Forward. Bye, guys.